7 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of the Lake Mills City Council to order for Tuesday, May 20th of 2025. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Curler.
Here.
Mrs. Schmager.
Here.
Ms. Quidnow.
Here.
Mr. Coots.
Here.
Mr. Waters.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next agenda item is Councilmember Board Reports and Acceptance of Meeting Minutes. So we have minutes from the City Council, Public Works Board, Parks Board, and Police and Fire Commission. Are there any comments or corrections on these 4 sets of minutes? No, Mary.
Yes, I noticed an error in the Public Works minutes. Sam's last name was missing. I think it's just a Scribner's error.
Oh, her last name was
Her last
missing?
name was missing.
Okay.
In the,
Sam Bell?
yes.
Okay, hopefully we can get that corrected then. Any other comments or corrections? Okay, seeing none, we will accept all those meeting minutes into our public record. And then next agenda item is our Joint Rock Lake Committee report, which they usually come once a month. And we all got an email from Pat Stevens, the current chair, with an update. I'll just briefly summarize it for the audience. There are new members appointed by the city. Shelley Quant is the new city representative, and Scott Polst, Terry Strike is the new town representative. There's also an organization, the Rock Lake Sports Club, that's interested in working with Joint Rock Lake Committee, and they'll be electing their officers at their next meeting next month. And they're also talking about doing a communication plan for community education on Rock Lake topics. So that was the update from the chair for Joint Rock Lake Committee. Okay, our next agenda item is correspondence. Michelle, would you like to kick that off?
Sure. Well, aside from Pat's email, I had a couple of emails regarding the public comment business that we're discussing today. An email regarding Westlake trees and an invite to the St. Paul Lutheran Church ribbon cutting. And then there was an email from the new county administrator who happens to live in the same subdivision as me. So looking forward to meeting him, as well as another email regarding library expansion.
Great, Greg.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, Mary?
I also had the same as Michelle and Greg, and I also had a call on the Century Building and one on Sandy Beach.
Great. Greg Coots?
Nothing to add.
Okay, and the only other things I would add are we've got correspondence regarding bird flu and a drainage district in the township, in the town of Lake Mills. Okay, thanks, everyone. Our next agenda item is questions and public comment. So the public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Comments can also be made about items that are not on the agenda if you've registered with the city clerk before the meeting is called to order. The state's open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided at the podium. If there's anyone online who would like to speak, please type your name and address in the chat feature, and the clerk can let us know. So I don't see anyone online that's here for public comment. So if there's anyone in the room, please step forward to the podium and share your thoughts with us.
Hello, Council. Hi, my name is Jim Noga. I am president of the Sandy Beach Mobile Home Association.
Microphone's not
Jim,
on.
I think the mic needs to be turned on there. You should see
Oh,
a green
there you
light.
go.
Yay.
Yay, we
Great.
got you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jim Noga. I'm the president of the Sandy Beach Mobile Home Association, and I'm here to speak about the obvious plans for Sandy Beach and the mobile home park. My family and I have been residents of the Mobile Home Association and Park since 1971, so I've been here a while, actually longer than most people actually believe. I've had the chance to meet with Eric, Dan, and Drake on May 8th, and I thank them for the opportunity to meet on the preliminary plans, so I'm hopeful that we'll have more opportunities to speak about the plans. On the whole, the association is very excited about the plans for the park, and especially the beachfront. I commend the council and all of the city workers who are working on the plans for their foresight and the efforts that are being put into it. The couple of things that we as the association would like to see more into the plans is more opportunities for access for elderly people, particularly golf cart access. Currently, there are no plans for that. Not only our park, but the Topels Park people. We are getting older. I hate to admit it, but we are getting older. And we do rely very heavily on our golf carts to access to the beach, and currently there are no plans for that. Pretty much in general, what we really do think and what we see on the beachfront area, we're really, really excited about that. So again, thank you for that. With regard to the mobile home park, we have some concerns about the current plans as they are of moving people out for at least a year, because we do have residents that are here for the entire 6 months. They move here from Florida and other southern states. What are they going to do for that year? How are they going to do it? What are the plans for moving our trailers? Where are they going to go for the year? Who's going to bear that cost? Who's going to bear the cost of the sheds that need to be moved? Who's going to bear the cost of other problems, the re-hookups of the antennas, the cable systems, those kinds of things? And currently, the plans don't necessarily allow for those kinds of things. Obviously, in a mobile home park, you do need some sort of storage areas for every home. Those are not currently in the plans. Again, you're eliminating on the A level, and we all recognize that the A level needs, the B level. The B level needs reconstruction of the infrastructure. That level was originally designed to be a campsite. So we all know that the piping systems down there are only about 6 inches deep. The A level, those piping systems are down 6 feet deep.
Jim, that's your 3 minutes, so if you can wrap it up, please.
I'll keep that short.
Thanks.
The A level was, in fact, reconstructed in 1994, if I'm correct, Drake, and then also redone a little bit more in 2004 without moving trailers. So please reconsider how to do this with the potential of not moving trailers. Thank you for your time, and I am hopeful that we'll have more opportunities to speak again more on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Jim. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment this evening? We've got a good crowd tonight, but nobody wants to speak, so. Last call, is there anyone who would like to speak during public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we will move on to the city manager's report. We have our monthly financial statements and reports from police, fire, and EMS. Drake, is there anything you would like to highlight?
Are there any questions?
Anyone have questions? Greg?
Sam, on the general fund financial statement, When do we normally see that state shared revenue come across? I noticed that there's nothing in that received category so far.
Usually July and November.
July and November, so it's two times during the year. Just wondering, because it's a large amount, so. okay.
Transportation aid is quarterly, but shared revenue is just twice a year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mary?
I have a question. I noticed in the EMS monthly report, a note on preliminary planning for the Lake Mills Triathlon, and we had a conversation last year regarding some of the apparent possible safety issues regarding the boat launch being open and vehicles and whatnot traveling through where all the bikes and the runners were, and I was just curious if that has been addressed this year for planning.
Good evening. Chief Schroeder and the event coordinator, Garrett, have worked closely with this one about the timing of people coming out. It's in phases, so there's not going to just be one huge group where they need to take up the whole Sandy Beach Road. So they're going to work on keeping one lane closed, and there's going to be police escorts, or not escorts, but closures at the Sandy Beach Road, and then there'll be some event coordinators down at Sandy Beach, getting people onto Sandy Beach, out of the beach area and onto the running and the biking and stuff. So they're gonna still keep it open. They are gonna, but they've kind of worked through it a little bit better, I think, this year, and kind of got a good feel for it the last couple of years. But they're gonna maintain Sandy Beach, at least one lane to be open for now. They did change the route, instead of going out, I guess, out into the township and coming back in the same way. They're going to go around the lake and come back through the north side of the city for the run. So they'll be coming through. But again, they're not going to have any road closures. They're going to maybe just do no parking for the afternoon. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the update.
Thanks, Troy. Any other questions for the city manager this evening? Okay, thanks. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 9, which is our council business. The first item is confirmation of city manager's appointments. He's recommending Laura Vang and Russ Christianson. Laura as a member of the Police and Fire Commission and Russ as the chair. Can I get a motion to confirm these appointments?
I'll make a motion to confirm the city manager's appointments to boards and commissions as noted.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Schmager, seconded by Ms. Quednow. Is there any discussion? Drake, anything you want to add?
These are reappointments. Both have expressed interest in continuing on the commission, and in Mr. Christianson's case, in the role as chair. So I recommend approval.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote, please, on the confirmation of the city manager's appointment to the Police and Fire Commission?
Mrs. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is Resolution 25-30. Lisa, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 25-30, resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, accepting the 2024 audited financial statement as presented by the external audit firm.
Thank you. And why don't we go to a presentation? I see Chuck Krieger is here from Hawkins Ash. And as soon as the sirens diminish, you can go ahead, Chuck, and then we can take a motion after you're done. Welcome.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for allowing me to do this remotely tonight. Saves me a few hours of driving. So I'm going to spend some time going over the summary financial statement. You probably are in possession. Hopefully you have a copy of that one. It's only about 10 pages long, but I'll go over that briefly. If you've got questions as we're going along, please interrupt or save them to the end, whatever suits your fancy. So let's get started. First thing I want to point out on page 2, and if you're looking on PDF, it's page 3, the independent auditor's report. Now, I point this out every year, but it is that we are independent in regards to the city of Lake Mills. I mean, the only interaction we have is we do your audit and we get paid for it. Now, this is a summary financial statement, which excludes like footnote disclosures and some of the detailed that is in the full financial statement. It does reference that you do have a clean opinion on the full financial statement. It's the best opinion you can get. It means we found everything satisfactory in all material respects. We did not look at every transaction. We would not want to spend the time to do that, and frankly, the cost would not be justified. So, but you did get an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion, same as what you had gotten last year, and every year I think that I've been on this job. So, summary financial statements. That report also talks about the management responsibilities. You have the responsibility for the financials, and we have the responsibility to do the audit. Okay. Moving on to page 4, which is the combined balance sheets. Just some comments here. Items to note, cash is up about a little over $3 million from last year. Doesn't mean that you had $3 million in profit. Basically, that comes down to extra probably dollars collected on tax roll prior to the end of the year. You had some TID money, extra cash in TID, and the unspent bond proceeds goes in there too for the general fund. Okay, receivables, accounts receivable, taxes receivable down a little bit. Again, taxes receivable and cash kind of go hand in hand. If you receive, more people pay before the end of the year, you receive taxes receivable will go down, your cash will go up. Looking other items in the assets section, special assessments. You can see special assessments are up about $600,000. You had a lot of activity in special assessments in the last few years, but the bulk of what you see there is there's, you have developers that the city does projects for. They special assess the developer, and then the developer pays when they sell a lot. So there's a fair amount of that in that special assessment number of 1.8 million. Some small amounts for interest receivable, and then the lease, that 1.5 million, that's related to the antenna that you have in the back of City Hall, where I think it's Verizon has entered into a very lengthy lease agreement with you to lease the land. And that 1.5 million is the present value of your future lease payments over the next, I think it's probably 50 plus years. You have some due from other funds. The inventories relate to your utilities. And then the restricted assets, that's principally restrictions on utility cash that shows up in there at almost $7 million. And then capital assets, that the number you see there of 36 million, that is strictly fixed assets on utilities. In the deferred outflows of resources, you'll notice a couple items for Wisconsin Retirement System. As I've mentioned in the past, this is not an asset, something that you can spend. It's your portion of the state Wisconsin Retirement System and the state life insurance for retirees. Moving on to the liabilities, stuff is fairly comparable in the liability section from last year to this year. The only difference being, you see there's long-term debt. But when you look at it, you at 26 million last year, 26 and a half, and you're at 25 and a half this year, roughly. So very comparable from year to year. I would say the same thing in the deferred inflows of resources. Principally, that's the tax levied for subsequent years. Now, realize on your tax levy, what shows up on this statement includes money that is levied and collected on behalf of other jurisdictions. So you collect money and then remit it to the school district and the local vocational school, and there's some county money there, and then obviously your local portion stays with the city. So overall, not anything out of the ordinary. The cash is the biggest, I guess. Cash and receivables biggest change on the asset side, and then the equity is up some. But again, a lot of that relates to the unspent bond proceeds that you typically get the proceeds in 1 year, and the spending goes over several years. Now, if we want to go to page 5, this shows sources of revenue. And if you look here, the revenue sources, you're up about $3 million over last year. Couple of areas where you had some significant jumps. I guess I'll note that the property taxes are up only about $300,000, but realize this includes your debt service taxes in there. In the last couple of years, you've split out your debt service into a separate fund. Thank you, Sam, for taking that off your to-do list, or off of the to-do list of the finance area. Intergovernmental revenues, your other grants revenue, you'll notice that went up about $600,000. Part of that was ARPA funds that you'd gotten in prior years and just spent in the last year. You know, and that was you running up against a deadline that you need to spend that money out. So that was taken care of in most of it in 2024. And then you received a grant reimbursement due from the state for pedestrian walkway. Okay, you'd gotten approved for this way back in 2020, and you had 4 years to start the project, and so it was started and basically finished in 2024. A little cleanup, I think, took place in 2025, but for the most part, most of that activity took place in 2024. Other places where there's some increase in revenue in the miscellaneous area, you'll see interest was up almost $300,000. Again, unspent bond proceeds means that you had more interest, more cash on deposit, which then also means you get more interest on those deposits. And then the contributions from developers, that's principally the $1 million there. That's developers paying the utility for work that was done there. And some of them, it's the developer who does the entire development and then in essence donates it, some of the infrastructure to the city, because the city then is responsible for kind of upkeep on water mains and sewer mains and that type of thing. And lastly, for increase, you've got the proceeds from long-term debt. You borrowed about $1 million more this year than last year. Again, there's always projects to be done. I know you had purchased a fire truck, and the sale of assets down below of $240,000. That was a sale of an old fire engine, and you replaced that in last year.
Chuck, before you move on, can I ask a question on this? You mentioned a couple times, and I'm not sure if this is for you or for Sam, but you mentioned unspent bond proceeds. So is that money that we borrowed but we didn't use? So what did we borrow for that we didn't use it?
There's quite a few items that haven't been completed yet where the bonds proceeds have been spent. A few of it, the majority of it, I think, is utilities. There's a bucket truck that was ordered that hasn't come in yet, so that was like $450,000 of it.
It's projects or equipment purchases that were not closed out in the year in which they're borrowed, and so they're carried forward.
I think maybe we took some action earlier this year to do that, right, to carry those forward, so there was a
Over.
list there.
Correct,
Okay.
you do that in December.
So just things that we haven't, thank you.
Okay, if we're gonna go to, next page. Now, page 7 just shows kind of a pie chart as to a breakdown of the revenues, and you can see the public charges for services that and taxes and special assessments are the bulk of the revenue. The public charges for services really is the utility charges for the most part, your electric, water, and sewer. And obviously taxes and specials, we referred to that already with the operational and the debt service and the special assessments that you send out to homeowners and for sidewalks and that type of thing. Okay, moving on to page 8 from the expenditure standpoint. Revenue went up, I think, about 3 million or so. Expenses only went up about 2 million. Again, back to that unspent bond proceeds. And items here are, if you look down side by side, the items are very comparable from one year to the next. Right from top to bottom, with the exception of the public safety line. You can see there's 1.4 million compared to 360 last year. And that's the new fire engine that you had purchased. Okay. Public Works up about $1 million. Again, that's the normal projects that you have going on. I realize some of that might be stuff that was started in 23 using 23 proceeds, and some of it completed in 24. So it's kind of some sort of a delay oftentimes from one year to the next. Other than that, I can't think of anything crazy other than some of the capital outlay stuff. You talked about the fixed assets that go into that infrastructure. Public Works would also include stuff like some of those projects that are taking place in TIF districts. Okay. And then your debt service principal, you can see you're paying off pretty much same amount of principal from year to year. And, other than the changes in capital outlay, really your numbers are very comparable from year to year. I was somewhat surprised when I put this report together. I said, okay, if you exclude the capital outlay in the capital projects area, you're probably within, $500,000 from year to year. We move on to the next one. Again, this shows our page 9 shows the pie chart. Public Works takes up the bulk of it. Again, relates to projects. And the Public Works is also where the utility comes in. Public Works, capital outlay, and public safety, the vast majority of your expenses. Then on page 10 of the PDF or 7 of if you've got a hard copy, this just shows the changes in fund balance or equity area from year to year for all your funds. The only, I guess, items to note here, general fund went up somewhat, but again, you'll be spending some of that money down as time goes on. The enterprise, sewer, electric, and water, they're fairly consistent from year to year. Small increases, and again, some of that relates to if they had rate increases for the year. And then right in the middle is like the capital projects activity. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 TID districts active, okay? And number 9 just started. You can see at the end of the year, there's deficits in a lot of those. But again, that's to be expected because what happens in a TID district, you invest in it early, and then people make improvements to it. Your tax base goes up for those TIDs. and you recoup the costs that you incurred through the increased tax base over time. You can see some of them do have positive increments, positive fund balance at the end of the year. But it's kind of, you have to invest money to make money. And down the line, you've always been very, successful in your TID districts. They've paid for themselves over time. And I would expect these will in the long run. But again, they have a 20 plus year life. So, and many of these are in their early stages. Page 11 is just kind of a graph to show what your equity is going, and all of them are trending up. And then the last page, just some general comments. Between the city and utility, you added about $5.5 million of fixed assets. Long-term debt for city and utility together is about $40 million. The city's general obligation debt is about $22 million, which is, less than half of what your debt limit is of $50 million. And the debt limit is based on your equalized value. So as the value of property in the city goes up, your debt limit would go up. You would expect that you would remain well below that limit. Other matters, we issue a report on internal control of financial reporting. Talks about material weakness for, we had some audit adjustments, which are similar to what we've had in the past. And we've had comments. I don't think we have any different comments this year than we have had in the past. So, other than that, I would just like to say thank you to the staff, Sam and his staff, and Teresa in the utility. They do a lot of work getting ready for our audit, and we appreciate all their hard work. It makes our job easier.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there anything, Drake or Sam, that you would like to add or highlight from the audit?
I would only thank Chuck. He's been doing audits for the city for many, many years, and this will be his final one for the city of Lake Mills, is my understanding. So just wanted to thank him for the work he's done for us over the years.
Well, you're welcome. I've thoroughly enjoyed working for the city and with the personnel there, all the way back from Jim Heilman and Betsy and now Sam, Steve Wilkie and Drake. So it's been enjoyable. I'm officially semi-retired, but the other staff that was on the job with me this year was not available to do this presentation tonight. So I volunteered to do it, and we appreciate you as a client. And like I said, I've enjoyed working with staff down there over the years.
Thank you. Best wishes, Chuck, in your retirement. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the audit?
Thank you,
Mary.
Chuck.
Oh, sorry.
I have one question. I am curious to know if our net position is considered strong for a city our size. I'm not familiar with what a good net position would be. I see most of our components have been rising since 2020, but our total net position, would you consider that strong?
Yeah, the net position, and I'm just going to flip to my copy of the full financial statement. Your general fund, your net position at the end of 2024, your fund balance was about $8.6 million for the general fund. That's the main operating fund of the city, and that represented a little over 100% of your expenditures for the year. So yes, that's a good position. Municipalities I see range anywhere from, I would say, 20 or so percent up to an excess of 150%. The 150% generally tends to be smaller municipalities with less I guess, less development and less infrastructure that they have to take care of. Okay. So yeah, you're in that position. You're in good shape from a fund balance standpoint. And one of the things that if you were inadequately, I guess, funded from a reserve standpoint, you would be borrowing short-term funds to, for cash flow purposes. And you really have never had to do that. So, yes, you're in, fundamentally, your reserves are in good shape.
Thank you.
Now, I wanted to ask a follow-up question related to that. I always pay attention to the unassigned or unreserved fund balance. And I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So on page 8 of the longer report, there's 2 bullet points. So one of them says 4.5 million is the unassigned fund balance, but then there's another line that said 5.878. So I wasn't sure if I was tracking which one was correct. But either way, I think that's up from last year. So that does give us some additional reserves if we need it.
Yeah, I've got, well, okay, so here's what the discrepancy is. It's really all of your governmental funds together, which means the general fund and the debt service fund and your TID districts, all those together, and including stuff like sanitation fund and all of those, overall, the total of that is 4.5 million unassigned.
Okay.
The general fund by itself is 5.8 million unassigned, which means obviously some of them have deficits.
Got it. Okay, thank you for
That's
clarifying
what-
that. So one is all the funds and the other one is just the general fund.
Correct. And
Okay.
that's why, if you have a deficit, it defaults to unassigned.
Got it. Okay, thank you for explaining that. Appreciate that.
And it's good question, because for a minute there, I'm like, oh, those numbers should agree, but then I see where you're getting it from, and that's the explanation.
Any other questions or comments? Greg?
Yeah, I have a couple. My first one's pretty easy. My name's misspelled on the financial statement. So S at the end for Waters, but it's a pretty easy one. The follow-up is usually when I serve on boards, it's usually in the private sector, and we get a chance to talk to the auditor without the staff being there, and we ask questions, of course, and go over things without the staff being there. Since this is a public situation here, there's cameras rolling right now, the staff is sitting there, but still, is there anything that this board should know about as far as the financials go? Is there anything we should be looking at for the future? Maybe something along the long-term debt, anything like that?
No, I mean, I like that you mentioned about the long-term debt. Even though you're well below the debt limit, you've got significant debt, okay? But the debt service that you have is not, is not constricting for you from your, from an operational standpoint. Some of my other municipalities have less from a percentage of their debt limit for that. But I think what's really happening is you're doing a lot of, I don't want to say catch up, but you've got a lot of infrastructure that needs some TLC, let's say. And you're attempting to kind of get on top of that from okay, let's get this, if we have to replace the road here, or curb and gutter, and we're digging up and doing water and sewer. Well, we might as well replace the road because we're already digging it up, and all that costs money, and you need to take out debt for that. So I think you're taking out debt appropriately, but it's just something to be mindful of, that you don't want that percentage to creep up too much.
Okay. Anything else?
I
I know I led you on the long-term debt thing, but go ahead.
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. The one thing that, and it's not anything from a management standpoint, but you guys, given your position and your geographic location, one of the challenges you have is retaining good people, whether it be in the utility or in the office or what have you, because there's a lot of competition from a wage and benefit area. Again, that's something that you need to be mindful of from a, okay, are we doing stuff appropriately to keep good people here?
Okay, thank you. And good luck on your retirement.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Chuck or for staff regarding the audit? Okay, seeing none, I think we need a motion for Resolution 25-30.
As soon as my computer comes up. I think I can do it from my sheet. Motion to approve Resolution 25-30, acceptance of the 2024 audited financial statements.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Schmager. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Lisa, would you please do a roll call vote on Resolution 25-30?
Ms. Quednow,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mrs. Schmager.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you, and thanks again, Chuck. Really appreciate your service to the city of Lake Mills for so many years.
All right. Have a good evening.
And also thank you to our financial staff for all your work in preparing for this audit and following up on all of the things that they've asked you to do. Appreciate that. Okay, our next agenda item is a library building project update, and I see our library director here, so welcome, Gerard.
Yeah, I'm Gerard from the library. And just giving an update on the project, things are going really well. I was actually looking through my notes sitting down here, and everything I was going to talk about was already in the memo, but just not to rehash everything. But thanks for the advisory referendum approval for going through that, passed 55% to 45%. It's a really solid vote in favor of the project and borrowing for the project. Extraordinary Women Project or fundraising has been going really well, raised over $150,000. We had a celebratory event for that 2 weeks ago. And we continue to fundraise for that. There's still a goal of raising about $200,000 there. We continue to work with FEH Design as the architects. There's concern about rising costs. I mean, there's always annual inflation, but uncertain economic issues have boosted up their estimate for contingency fees or contingency costs as well. For the project right now, we have about $700,000 on hand. That's what we've fundraised so far, and we haven't really begun the fundraising yet. And donations we already have from EMS, Friends of the Library, existing funds, and the Extraordinary Women Project. Good chance on donations from local foundation, Greater Watertown Area Community Foundation, the local Lake Mills Foundation, some possible donations from out-of-state residents, people who used to live here. And we've built a lot of momentum. Jody Sweeney, our fundraiser, couldn't be here tonight because of family issues. But as she used the word momentum several times, and especially the Extraordinary Women Project has built a lot of enthusiasm and really highlighted the importance of an expansion. And we've got, well, all this side is all library side. People here to support the project. And as Joni said, we have big donors and they're ready to give, but we need the city to say yes. We need a commitment from the city. Now, we want to get on the CIP for, the request is to be on the CIP for $2.5 million in 2027. I originally had been saying 2028 because I was expecting a longer capital campaign, Jody said the capital campaign would be 6 to 8 months rather than the 18 months I was wrongly quoting earlier. So as we're really moving along here and raising money, we're looking to raise about $2 million to the capital campaign and other sources in about 6.5 months. 6 to 8 months, and keep the process moving forward. The catch-up is that we want to maintain that momentum and keep it going. And the CIP generally isn't worked on until July or August. Drake nodded his head yes. And we're hoping that the council can commit a little bit earlier, ideally in June. I'm not sure what I'm asking for here, a resolution, or just what we want is we want the city on board, committed to the project for the donors to give. And that's, we passed step 1 with a referendum, a solid vote. Step 2 is actually just official announcement by the city before people are going to give. That's it.
Okay, are there any questions for?
Oh, and donuts and coffee tomorrow at staff day if you're able to come by. It's at 9 o'clock.
Oh, great.
The staff
Yeah,
would love
we
to
get
meet you.
donuts.
We could show you through the library, show you where we're cramped in tight and some of the plans we have to really make a lot of improvements.
Are there any questions or comments for the director?
Yeah.
Mary?
I have a question. I think it would be helpful as I am thinking about the ask for $2.5 million to understand the operational or the expenditure side of what the build will require, the expenses. Because, you know, the current general fund has been creeping up quite a bit over year on year, our contribution to the overall expenses, and you're about at $500,000, and with an expansion you had mentioned at a prior meeting, an increase is expected. So I would like to learn more about what specifically you would be looking at for additional increases.
I don't
as
have
it relates to
specific
that
numbers
general.
right now. I should be able to get some for you working with the architects too. The main costs would be, we're already understaffed. So we do need to add staff. That'd be one component. As far as operational for the building, I expect it would be cleaning costs and electric and utility costs. Those are really the only two right there.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know, like, at what percent increase you're expecting and what that looks like on the long term. So when you look at the overall picture of the costs coming from the city's fund budget and the capital campaign, kind of what that big picture looks like, I just would like to know a little bit more on that operation.
Yeah, for operational costs, I'd have to get back to you. I don't want to make a guess. It'd be crazy wild. And is that answering what you're looking for? Or am I missing something?
Well, I was just, I've been learning a lot about looking at the budget.
Right.
I've been on for a year, so I look back at history to see how different parts of the organization have been working as it relates to the finances. And I just found it, I looked at the library. So the library is a conversation for us. And so when I was looking at the expenditures, there has been a 26% increase over the 20% increase over the last 3
yeah.
years. And and almost half, 30 to 45% of your expenses are paid through the general fund. And so I was trying to understand a little bit about the expectations of what changes you may see in how your expenditures are budgeted, like how large are they going to get? What expectations are they coming from?
I would be very surprised if we had another huge budget increase like that. That was mainly, well, pretty much all from catching up on pay.
Yeah, I think just to provide some context for you, in 2023, the city completed, in early '24, completed its compensation analysis that we had contracted with McMahon & Associates. And there was an analysis of where employees were at in relation to market pay for their position. The library was one of, if not the most undercompensated departments within the city, and so it was one of the most significant investments when in the 2024 budget, the city council approved significant investments in employee compensation to bring our staff back into competitive market pay. And so that is going to be as probably the main contributing factor to the increase you see in the general fund contribution to the library budget.
Okay.
There have been conversations through budgets in the past around library staffing. The library has one of the more unique staffing models of departments in the city in that there's 2 full-time employees, and then the remainder of the employees range from, 0.15 to 0.75, I think, FTEs. And that has been through, that has just been how it's kind of built over the years, and there have not been additions of FTEs over time in the library. And so I think when you're talking about library staffing, there is some opportunity when you're talking about, increasing full-time equivalents at the library. For some of it, you're partway there already. The delta, you're not going from no employee to another 101 whole FTE, but it may be taking someone who's at half-time or 0.75 time to full-time to increase our capacity. Now that's not an insignificant cost, because when you're not full-time, there's a greater percentage of your benefit costs that the employee is paying out of their paycheck. But there is opportunity there that is not as costly as just creating a new employee. So I think that would be the first thing we'd look at, is if we did identify staffing at the library as a priority during the budget, is which positions might we be able to elevate to full-time, so that there's more consistent and known staffing schedules, rather than what Gerard does now, which is schedule a multitude of part-time employees to fill the hours that they're open.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Greg?
That was a great conversation. It just happened there. I guess what I'd like to see, I know that we have to get this on the agenda, so staff needs to work with our council president to get it on our agenda. But what I'd like to see is an executive summary that outlines the project, where the money's coming from, our investment, what's the project look like, what's the budget going to be like moving forward, so that we have all those details and we can make a smart decision in that meeting. So, make sense?
Yep, I can work with Gerard on developing that.
There's some great information already in his memo here, so just
Yeah,
to
and we've
refine that
been
a
working
little
with
bit.
FEH, well, for several years now, but just since the referendum, we've been working with them. We've tried to be as fiscally responsible as possible. We don't want them going through and developing the plan more and more and paying them to do that if things aren't going to turn out properly. And they met with us at the library board meeting yesterday. We were talking about budgets and options and ways to save there as well. So we're trying to come up. You're always fighting inflation. We'd like to get it done as soon as possible, but then it's unknown how costs are going to rise.
I'm really excited to hear how well the fundraising is going, and glad to see all the supporters here in the room. And I was also pleased to hear you say, Gerard, that you're maybe talking more about 27 rather than 2028, because I think that's a part of the momentum piece. And certainly we don't know, nobody can quite predict cost increases and those kinds of things. But I think, the council's in a little bit different position here than we usually are on projects, where usually we see the full project and the detailed budget and the detailed plans, and then we approve for it to go out to bid. And here, we're being asked to commit to some funds, and we really don't have the precise building plan, or even, like a 90% sort of a firm building plan yet to know what we're investing in. And for the community, to know what we're investing in. So I'm just wondering how we can get something that's a little closer to the definitive plan. I know that the library board has set a cap on 4.5 million, so my understanding is it's not, the total budget isn't going to go above that, But is there anything that we can do to get a little closer to final on the plan so that we know what we're budgeting for?
We can. I mean, we've been working on those estimates, and that's $4.5 million for $2025, and we've been working with the architect specifically on budget, and we should be able to get something to you. They were going to come back with some other ideas and cost savings because the budget had just been getting a little high, and they were going to come back with some information on that in 2 weeks, they said. Yeah. Then I could share that, and I could work with Drake to put together a more formal plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not like a road where everything is just right there. We're also working out the fundraising too.
I think
Understood.
a good goal in conjunction with the executive summary that council's asked for. The library board last night was discussing options of design features and essentially changes that they may need to make in order to meet that $4.5 million budget number. And so the architect is right now costing out what those options are so that they can start to choose what's necessary and then amend the design as may be necessary. And so we may not, you won't likely, I think the council can get to, a concept of the design of the review, with the understanding that this is a unique project in that this is a partnership between two independent boards. Obviously, one is the funding mechanism largely for the department, but there's an independent control piece of the library board as well under state statute. And so there's a dialogue between the budget side of things and then the design needs and operations of the library that factors into it. But I do think that the library board will be grappling with some of those design decisions, and then we'll be able to have FEH put together what, as final of the concept floor plan, review as possible so that you can at least see what amenities and what services and programs and needs of the community that the library is striving to meet through this project, and see at least a little bit about how that's gonna lay out. It is a bit more unique when you're talking about a building than some of our other projects. The commitment, obviously, in advance is a little unique. The fundraising component is something to consider as far as what. How does that play into the fundraising capabilities of the library, knowing that the likelihood of the project happening is much higher with the city backing, the city being a financial partner in this. And so I think getting to that point where the council is comfortable with the action that they're being asked to take will be important in the coming months. I know the library is looking for June, but I think obviously we'll need to take the time that it takes to get the council to the point where they're willing to make that commitment. And so we will work to get as much of that detailed information together for you that's possible at this stage in the project development.
And I'd like to point out, I hate coming to the board and keep asking for a decision right away. That's not what we're trying to do. But we do want to maintain the momentum and keep things moving forward.
Thank you. Michelle?
Gerard, do you want to remind everyone what the original request was regarding how much this was going to cost?
What was it, like 12 million?
Yeah.
Then it went up to 13 million? It's been a long process. I mean, we've been doing this since the final design idea came out in 2020, and then everything got waylaid. And then the pricing, when we redid it and looked at it again a couple years later, it came in at about $13 million, and we keep scaling back and scaling back and scaling back. And we're going to have to scale back again, most likely, in some ways.
So the reason I wanted to point that out was to give perspective of where the original intent and how much was supposed to be invested for this was and where we're at now, like at 30% of what was originally asked for. And as someone who sits on the library board, I might have some biases here, but I believe that the council should consider making that investment because it is an investment in the community. And I think that the payback from that investment will be twofold, if not more. So with regard to any hesitancy, because we don't normally, like Drake so eloquently put, we normally have the plan with all of the, the itemized, everything laid out in front of us. And here, Gerard is asking us to consider how we could we just need you to loan us some money or give us some money, and we promise everything will be okay. It's a scary investment process, right? But at the end of the day, what we're investing in is really quite important to the community, and it's important, and they showed it in the referendum vote. So obviously, again, I might have some biases here, but I think it's a good investment that we should consider.
I don't want pothole roads, but those don't really make the community like the library does. I mean, we have all the people here in support of the project. I've been to plenty of city council meetings where it's just angry people in the audience yelling at everybody. Everybody here is here because they're happy for the library and they're happy for the project. And it's just a really positive activity that we're doing here.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there any further comments or discussion? So Drake and Gerard, do you have a sense of sort of what to do next? And so then we'll look for something back on a future agenda.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything until the second meeting in June, just because I want to see where that conversation the library board is going to have at its next meeting with the architect goes, and how close we can get to a firm concept when the council's being asked to make a commitment to the project. Simply because I think that the council, I think, has a right to know what their investment is buying them. And I think that we will be able to get there. We know what amenities the library board is targeting as priorities and what they're going to prioritize in their design. It's just going to be a matter of them making the decisions of, where those priorities are going to go, what's going to fall by the wayside to get to the budget that they think they need to be at. And then trying to put something on paper for you to show what the ultimate goal of the final product is going to look like.
Great. Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for being
thanks.
here, Gerard. Thanks to all the library supporters for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, our next agenda item is letter D, is the Sandy Beach redevelopment update. So I guess we'll turn it over to staff.
Sure. So this is going to be a high level overview. I think the presentation is going to contain information that is not entirely fleshed out yet, but what the goal really is to kind of set up and show for you what the phasing order could look like on the big ticket items. You will see references to potential park amenities. Those are still being kind of considered by the Parks Board, and they're still in parallel to this process working on them. So nothing that you see in there has achieved a recommendation from the Parks Board, and nor are they a hindrance or an accelerant as far as any of the other infrastructure projects that need to go on. So when you're looking through this, anything that's kind of the interior of the park, you can really put into a year as the council so prioritizes budgetarily or with the services and amenities that you want to provide. And so we'll kick off the presentation, but there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done on this. This is kind of showing you what a timeline looks like to show how if we want to keep steady progress on that, when decision points need to be made on certain things, as well as a recommendation on kind of when we're going to start, which takes into account the timelines of notice and how long we're going to need in order to prepare for some of this. So once we know the council is at least tentatively on board with with the outline as shown, we can start working up specific project plans to specific phases and more detailed breakdowns of everything for decision points for the council. To scrutinize, decide what you want to provide at Sandy Beach, what you want to prioritize, and what policy decisions you'd like to make as far as revenue generators and things of that nature. And so we still need to do revenue projections. We still need to kind of show you what we expect to obtain in revenue, for example, from the mobile home park, as well as, and then comparing that to the costs and principal and interest payments that you're going to be incurring if you make those investments. And so no decision is being requested tonight. We are mainly presenting this as a first run at some ideas and knowing that we're on at least a semblance of the right track so that we can continue to narrow this down into more and more detailed levels for the council as we move forward with how we want Sandy Beach to look like moving into the future.
Thank you. Over to Brandon.
Yeah, thank you.
Brandon Herbert, thanks
from
for joining
Strand. Dwayne is probably going to be talking quite a bit as well. And I think I saw Dustin Wolf from Mead and Hunt was online as well. Sandy Beach is obviously a tremendous asset for the city. There's a lot that can be done there. It's a very well-used park. And I just want to, go back through some of the history on the slide here from Dave. We have the outline of the presentation tonight. So we're going to talk about some of the history with this redevelopment plan, which eventually, a number of years ago, culminated at redevelopment plan Q, and that letter Q isn't accidental, that we really did start with concept A and, and over some staff iterations and I believe some discussions with council and Parks Board and others, we eventually ended up at plan Q. That plan was presented at a council meeting back in 2018. We're now at a redevelopment concept R. We'll talk through some of the potential phasing plans with that concept R. The reasons for that phasing, the way that we have that at least kind of laid out, obviously at the discretion of the council, how that you want to proceed with that. And then obviously the capital improvement plan associated with that phasing plan, and then the impact on the city budget and some of the monetization of the parking lot potentials. Next slide, please, Dave. So just a quick history from 2016 to 2018, Dustin and his team at Mead and Hunt put a lot of effort into a great redevelopment plan. It was a pretty significant document. There's a lot of information in there. Dwayne's kind of holding it up there. It's pretty thick. If you want to go back and look at that entire plan, it was presented October 16th, 2018. It's linked on the agenda there, and then Mead and Hunt also gave a nice presentation kind of summarizing that plan. From 2018 to 2019, there was some council and public feedback, and then perhaps one of the more major changes was the boat launch actually moved into real design, and we determined how many boats and trailers we wanted to fit in that space and kind of what that ended up looking like. Which resulted later in concept Q. And then in 2021, we were calling it phase one of the redevelopment plan. The boat launch was reconstructed, or was constructed, I should say, which moved the boat launching aspect of the park out of the center of the beach and over to the west edge. And that exhibit on the screen there is that concept Q that was presented back in 2018. Next slide, please. Rita, sorry, I guess that was, yeah, this one is concept Q. Too many concepts. So this was the one that actually incorporated the real boat launch design, essentially as built and exists today. You'd notice that there's some changes there that, or some things there that are, maybe not going to happen anymore. There's the large brown rooftop restaurant facility that, the referendum last November somewhat did away with. And so when you remove that significant facility from the park, there's a space there that needs to be filled or could be filled with many options. Next slide, please, Dave. So after the restaurant was, went away, We've moved to concept R, which Eric and the Parks Board and lots of others talked through how to fill that space and what that might look like. The restaurant was removed. It was replaced with other facilities like a shelter with concession capability. It's a little small on the screen there, but we do have a large concept in the packet for council tonight. That's currently showing like an ice rink with catenary type lighting. There's a few smaller shelters and warming huts, internal pathways. There's a food truck plaza that was added to the north side of the parking lot with the intent of kind of replacing that food service capability from the restaurant. The volleyball courts from some of the previous concepts were moved west. That would take them out of an area that is currently to some degree forested. And this concept also creates a large contiguous beachfront by removing some of the stuff in the centers, like the old boat launch and the bait shop there. There's a new playground added where the current maintenance building is, a new restroom, and then an outdoor shower building. Next slide, please. So the potential concept, our phasing plan that we're showing here, again, is very fluid. There are some overarching concepts that we thought are important to note, that the green and the blue, or sorry, the green and the yellow. The green is the B level that Mr. Noga referenced earlier with the shallow infrastructure. That is, in this concept or phasing plan, proposed to be the first thing to be redeveloped. And the main reason is, as he alluded to earlier, the underground facilities are just not in good shape. You'll see on another slide, there's some issues, and Eric's here today as well, and can maybe attest if you'd like to dive into the details about what exactly the city does each year there in terms of addressing those issues. And then the yellow with the parking lot to the left or the west on the exhibit would be the next thing to go. Again, there's some years listed. You can't really see it on the screen here in the room, but if you zoom on the exhibit online, those years are hypothetical. This would be, to some degree, the fastest you can move. Potentially, you could move a little bit faster, but there are some lease things that we can talk about later. But the green and the yellow, from a civil engineering perspective, we feel like should be designed together. There's a lot of interaction there between stormwater drainage, treatment, the underground utilities, the flow and the grading and drainage of the parking lots and the redone mobile home community, the lower level B there. The storm sewer outlet to the lake is way over by the boat launch, and so you'd have to run a storm sewer over to the green area, kind of through the parking lot. And so there's just a lot of interaction between those that, lots of things are doable, but it would be cleaner, we feel like, to design those all together and then piecemeal them out, from a budgetary and other perspective to more digestible chunks. As Drake alluded to earlier, we have a red box and a red line there that points out that anything north of that line can really be done at any point. There is a yellow there that corresponds to the yellow with the parking lot for basically one reason alone, which is the volleyball courts, that when you redo the parking lot, it will get rid of the current location of the volleyball courts. And so if maintaining volleyball as a facility there for every year is a priority, you would have to move the volleyball courts before or simultaneously with redoing the parking lot. Otherwise, many of the facilities inside the park could be done separately. I like that term, not a hindrance or an accelerant to anything else. So that's really important to note. Also important to note is that these things are not necessarily they don't have to consecutive years either. That, you could do the green and then wait 2, 3, 4 years to do the parking lot. Same thing with the orange or the A level or never do it. There's a lot of wiggle room with how these things could be pieced together. Next slide, please.
Of that infrastructure beneath the A level to really determine how many years, is of useful life is left in that, so that the council knows its risk tolerance. We know it's not as bad as B level because it's not experiencing the same operational difficulties that we have annually on B level. We have found some old project documents on some utility improvements that were done, as Mr. Noga noted, in the 80s and 90s. We have not found a full-scale redevelopment of those utilities, but we have seen some water and sewer improvements that were made in conjunction with the bathhouse improvements and some other projects that have gone on. And so it's possible that A level could continue on as it is currently situated for a number of years. But we want to do a full televising of that system to the best extent we can in order to provide that information to the council. But we know just from an operational point of view that the B level is in worse shape and has not been touched in a much longer time than A level has been.
If I may add to your question, that was some of the conversations as far as balancing and softening the years and getting rid of the lumpiness in the CIP. It kind of led Brandon and I to the yellow area, excuse me, and the note, looking to try and get the parking lot over a winter season. And so actually the parking lot in this option is starting in the fall, in the way we have it shown as fall of 27, and then completion in spring. And then in that case, that project gets split between 2 CIP years. So very much so, we tried to work both things hand in hand. And we'll get a little bit more into the monetization and maybe the desires of whether the parking lot in its existing shape is acceptable to the council for a number of years, may actually push that yellow area off as well. So back to you, Brandon, and the presentation.
Thank you. So the reasons for the phasing order, design the B level. There's also a pump station there that is currently in the city's CIP for reconstruction next year. That pump station, I guess in this phasing plan, would continue to be planned to be reconstructed. It would be a fairly tight site that you could design simultaneously with the rest of that lower level, but then break off a piece and redesign and replace the pump station. But still have it, match and be well thought out with the rest of what you want to do down there. And the stormwater basin, as they all impact each other. The B level is the highest priority, as we've been discussing. The B level MHC is mobile home community, would likely need a lease period to be completed, meaning we don't feel like you could do that in a shoulder season as well due to some of the lease constraints, and then specifically paving timeframes and temperature requirements, that it would be pretty difficult to get that paved and completed before a typical lease period and starting in April. Next slide, please. As Dwayne just said, that the parking lot and stormwater basin could be a shoulder season projects, least impact to the park and its users during the busy summer season. The storm sewer for the boat launch, as I mentioned earlier, needs to come essentially across the site from west to east. The parking lot reconstruction would eliminate the volleyball courts, so you can move those in the same calendar year, or go without volleyball for some period of time, a year or more. The pump station is in 26 CIP. It could be also in addition to that general area with the pump station could be a new maintenance shed. The maintenance shed right now is kind of in the northern part of the park, like quite interior to it. And the park staff have to drive pretty much into the depths of the park to reach their equipment. Not meant to say depths like it's a bad thing. It's just, that space in the concept there is shown for a more user-friendly, playground kind of down by the lake. It's a flat area under some nice oak trees that, where a maintenance shed, you could pull back out into more of a utilitarian zone with the pump station and stuff that's not so front and center and on the lakefront. And so that maintenance shed, could be built as part of the pump station project. We could kind of design a space for it in that zone and not actually build the shed until some other point in time. But those are all some of the reasons why this phasing plan is shown, at least for the first two phases there. Next slide, please.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The pumping station services what area?
It's Topol's Trailer Park, for one, has its own private pumping station that pumps up into the Sandy Beach area. And then it's Woodland Beach Mobile Home Community. There's a map on the screen here too but
It's all these blue, green, red lines is what it services.
Go ahead.
The sewer the gravity sewer is the green lines.
Yeah.
And actually, a portion in the facility, probably in the first phase, definitely comes to the lift station. Some of the other portions of the park actually flow toward Ferry Drive. But it's also collecting sewer that's coming down Sandy Beach Road from the east to some extent. Brandon mentioned Woodland Trailer Park, also some of Circle Drive area comes this way before it's then pumped back to Ferry Drive and the lift station that is by Lakeside Lutheran. Does that help answer that question?
So it ties in.
It currently does. The tentative plan, and again, Strand is in design right now, and previous discussions in the CIP actually, and plans when we did South Main Street, was to potentially take this Sandy Beach lift station and pump it to the top of the hill at Rotary Park, so that it'll flow into the South Main Street sewer rather than going through the lift station that is at Lakeside Lutheran, and in a sense, reducing the amount of load on that other lift station. A little longer force main, we're in the process, Brandon's in the process of looking at the cost and whether or not the cost makes sense to run that longer line. That's part of the design that they're working on for that Sandy Beach lift station.
So as I look at this map,
Is your microphone on?
it is not, thank you. So as I look at this map, it looks like it services a lot of property here on Sandy Beach Road, which I believe a lot of that property is township. Is that correct?
Just the
Yeah,
last, just the
you're
last like
correct.
20
That is
homes.
the old Rock Lake Sanitary District.
We are, go ahead.
Yes, the homes are technically in the township still, but they do have sewer service from the city because they were part of the Rock Lake Sanitary District.
Okay.
The
city
city
took-
took ownership.
There you go.
Yeah.
In the 90s, we took ownership of the Rock Lake Sanitary District because it essentially had failed as an organization, and the city was the only entity that was capable of taking over that system.
Makes sense to me. Not completely, but partially.
So, kind of a good quote down at the bottom there from Eric is that, even with annual cleanings and at times quarterly cleanings by wastewater treatment plant staff, contracted service calls are still required regularly at Sandy Beach, especially during the first weeks of the season opening at around April 15th. Frequent issues include sewer backups, broken pipes from the city laterals. The level B, the lowest level and closest to Sandy Beach, has the highest frequency of issues, but both sewer and water supply issues occur at each level in the trailer park annually. And so that is a frequent thing that the city staff is having to deal with, especially when people come back from the winter of non-use and discover problems.
Yeah, I've been on Public Works for the last couple of years, and this comes up often in Public Works, so I have a little bit of a background, but thank you.
Next slide, please, Dave. So here's that CIP that we talked about. And again, this is just a thought, a potential plan at the discretion of the council, that in this current year, 2025, we would design the parking lot and the mobile home west. West is the B level. And also the Sandy Beach lift station, which is already currently in the CIP for 2025 design. I should note before I go farther that there is some color coding here, that everything in green is related to the parking lot. Everything in kind of a purple color is the pump station. The blue is some foundation slabs for mobile homes that we'll talk about later. Black is the design or construction of the actual mobile home community sections, west and east or A and B levels. And then the red is the internal to the park stuff, all the amenities inside the park that could kind of go at any point. So I guess moving down the list here in 2026, we would have construction of the pump station and some three-phase electric. That would be both, the electric would be both for the pump station motors, but then also that would be really useful to have for the food truck area and the concessions area. We could potentially also do a maintenance shed as discussed previously, but that is something that's very fluid. Could drop that in at any future point. And then 27 would be the B level or the mobile home community west loop. We would also do kind of like the eastern part of the parking lot, which connects to that area. And then a portion of the parking lot, as Dwayne had mentioned earlier, is shown in 2027 just because we would likely do part of the site work in the fall. We're thinking site grading, base course, storm sewer, things like that, but then potentially likely not get to paving, landscaping, curb and gutter, things like that until the spring. Go ahead, Dwayne.
And to add to the fluidity, if you also look then, potentially if you look at moving the parking lot to the shoulder season between 28 and 29, you actually could move that 900,000 that's in 27 to really balance as you said earlier, Mary, balance the CIP even more, right? You could get to 1.5 million and 1.5 million in 26 and 27 with that move. May not be the choice of the council to move that far out, but know that there is some fluidity and ability to move some things within the CIP that's being shown.
I think as well, as you're looking at this CIP, there's some assumptions that have been made because we have not moved deep enough into the process to really clarify and solidify what the council's vision for Sandy Beach is. So, for example, the parking lot you see assumes that the city council wants to continue with food trucks as your form of food service. If that is not your desire, then that would change. It also assumes that the council wants to redo the parking lot. You don't necessarily have to. It also assumes that the city council wants to remain in the mobile home community business. That isn't something that we've necessarily settled on, and the council has not yet seen, what is the principal and interest, what is the total investment going to take, and what can you expect from lease revenue after that. So this is all information that we're going to have to clarify and decision points that are going to have to be made as we move through this process that's going to change what this looks like, what's included, and what's important to the city council in terms of timeline. And so there's certain things that if we choose to do them will necessitate doing other things, right? If you're redoing the parking lot, you're going to redo your stormwater. If you are redoing the B level of the mobile home community, then that's going to necessitate other things and if you choose not to do something, then there's an opportunity for you to do other things as well. And so we're at the initial stages of this. Concept R is brand new. We're at the beginning now. We've spent, in my time here, the focus has been on full service restaurant. That conversation has changed to date. Not that the council can't revisit it if it so chooses, but at this point, there's been no more effort made in that realm. And so as we keep going, we're going to further clarify and solidify what the council wants to see out of Sandy Beach and how quickly you want to see it at Sandy Beach.
Thank you, concrete stuff. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that there's about $1 million in that CIP for concrete slabs for mobile homes. The reason why we included those is because there is an option for the city to provide kind of like a mobile home ready site. That there's code, and Troy could expand on this quite a bit if he'd like, but that gives the city an option to create like a one-size-fits-all slab and kind of have these sites ready for somebody to put a mobile home on. There's an image of the detail from the code on the screen there. That is one option for how the city would allow people to move back into these sites.
And what one size fits all would be, from the state code perspective, is you'd build it to the maximum, essentially the maximum size of a mobile home. The council has the ability to limit those slabs and say, we're only gonna build slabs to support this level of mobile home. And that affects the cost. Or there's other options that Brandon will touch on here as well, as far as requirements of lessees or how we want to do this. But there's a wide range of the cost it can take to make a mobile home community ready for the mobile homes to be placed on it.
Yeah, and I mean, in general, these slabs are a thickened edge with a thickened strip down the middle concrete pad that, the other options as shown on the screen here are foundations that are home specific. And so, people are, likely going to have a wide variety of mobile homes. And code does require a foundation. And so you either have to have something that's like this, kind of a maximum one size fits all, or you have to have like a pier style or other style that, hit very certain load bearing points on the trailer or the mobile home itself. And so the options are that the city could build something like this. Those home specific ones are certainly less expensive. And one of the options to, reduce the city's capital outlay here by about $1 million, not providing the one-size-fits-all slab, is to require the lessees to install the home-specific foundation styles, and there are a number of options for that in the code. Of course, there would be other options as well, but.
Question on those, I guess two. One, no matter what style, do the utilities come up through the slab then, the water and sewer and electric? Or?
In the slab style, they would. In the home-specific style, those are more like, like pylons. There would be a utility connection underneath, but it would most likely not be through a concrete slab.
Okay. And then if the lessee were to install it, who owns the foundation?
That's not, I don't think that's really what's being contemplated. This is going to be city project and property. It's more contemplated that if the association or us as the landlord of the property were to dictate we'd only accept X, Y, and Z mobile homes, that would limit our requirement to install these kind of super grade slabs. So we weren't really contemplating having a piecemeal choice by choice, like this lessor or this lessee, this renter wants this specific mobile home, therefore this must be installed. It was rather going to be the specific specs that were allowed for mobile homes in the park would dictate
Just be A,
the
B,
scope
and C are
of the
the only
slab.
choices or something like that. I guess I was asking specifically about that third bullet point. It sounds like there would be an option to allow the lessee to install it at their own cost. So then I was trying to understand, if they're the lessee, they don't own the land, but then do they own the foundation if they have paid for it? Or
Yeah,
and maybe that's a fine point, but I'm just curious.
It's something that may be possible, but would need to be explored, and as well as discussions with the mobile home association.
Or the council may say, we don't want to offer that option. We want to
That is a
have
more
some
complicated
standardized.
route than the other
Okay.
options that are before you.
Okay, fair enough.
If I may clarify a couple things, the size that was estimated for the concrete pad was for a 14 by 56 trailer. which is kind of a mid-sized average trailer size. I think that last bullet point kind of talks to if you're going to allow different sizes, then potentially that gives us the flexibility to change that. There might also be specific foundation locations on specific trailers, depending on their size, that could potentially be at a smaller cost because you don't typically have to build the entire slab if you're just supporting the trailer in its specific point of support. The other point that we talked about this and brought this slide up was also to talk about other lot. And we only really talked about the mobile home slab requirements, but other lot amenities like a gravel driveway or an asphalt driveway or things like that. That cost, I don't believe, Brandon, is included in the estimate inside the lot. But this gives an idea of how those costs could escalate inside the lot as we go through these iterations.
The reason why we put this in here is because if you were to, remove everything and put it back, what exactly is the state that you're putting it back to for people to move into? And this would definitely be the most potentially expensive component, is the foundations. Next slide, please, Dave.
Aren't we going to have to put together just a complete set of detailed requirements or allowances or an ordinance to limit or to drive what we would want and not want when we get this all moving forward anyway, which would then drive what happens with driveways paved or maybe or maybe an and, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Won't we have to do that as part of this process anyway? Figure out what that will look like for this new development?
Well, you certainly have to design and decide what amenities you want to offer within the mobile home park, if you want to offer a mobile home park. I think that's the beginning of this conversation. As it sits right now, there's a lease. The city owns the property.
Yep.
There's a lease with each individual renter, each individual mobile home owner that occupies a lot. There are rules and formation documents that were created by the homeowners association that dictate some of that, but we don't have specific stricture in ordinance that says mobile home X yes, mobile home Y no. There are in the bylaws and the rules, there are limits on size, there are limits on foundation, there are limits on other additions, but not in ordinance.
Oh, okay.
I think if you built a slab that could only support a certain size mobile home, you would by default have limited what could go into that size, because it would not be permitted for something larger to be able to be placed on top of it. So if we chose to move forward with replacement of the B level of the mobile home community, we'll want to look at the different options that are available to the council to make it site ready essentially, and what costs are acceptable to you. Because if we want to limit our costs, then the answer is to limit the size of the trailer that can go on, to limit the size of the foundation, which will lower our costs. And I think, and we can talk more about, the next slide that's coming up here is kind of about monetization of the parking lot. There's a lot of text there, but there is a conversation to be had about the replacement at this time of B level, and if the council wants to continue with a mobile home park in that community. And so I think as we move forward in this process, what I've been talking about is the next steps are, what do we think the investment is going to take to make it ready? What can we reasonably expect the revenue from what you would put in there to be? What is the principal and interest payments going to be on that debt that you're going to have to take out? And does that make financial sense to the council to continue being in that realm? Especially because depending on the policy decisions of this council, if you choose to monetize the parking lot, that revenue source is likely, has a greater potential than the entrance fee system that we have. That's operationally very difficult to enforce, detracts from some of the aesthetic value of the park because of the fencing that's installed. Without the gatehouse and the entrance, that most, if not all, of that fencing would be eliminated to create a more open park area, and then you would pay to park, and then entrance would be free. If you biked there, you could enter for free. If you walked there, you could enter for free. And that potential, which we'd want to clarify further, maybe could likely replace the revenue that you're going to gain from the B level replacement because of the amount of lots you're going to lose at B level when it has to be redone. To conform with modern zoning standards, modern code. And so if you have that choice, right, you may have that choice, I guess I'll say, we have not done that analysis of not experiencing budgetary pain because you've replaced that revenue source with another. And so I think this is kind of, that we've talked about it, we've kind of talked around it over the years of the city being in the business of the mobile home park. We know B level is in danger of utility failure, which we'd like to avoid. Now the question will be before you is, do you replace B level, or do you remove B level, monetize the parking lot, or do you replace B level and still monetize the parking lot? Those are all the options that are before you. And then I think the other piece of that is once we televise A level and know the condition of that, you're going to know how many years A level might be able to go without any investment from the city if you wanted to push off that expense on A level, and we kind of go on from there. So as you can tell, there's a lot of decisions the council kind of needs to grapple with as far as what do you want to provide, what revenue sources are you interested in, and what businesses do you want to be involved in moving forward. And just the overarching question is what is this council's vision for the future of Sandy Beach?
Why don't you continue? Oh, I was going to have him continue on with the parking lot part. Do you have a question before that?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Dan's comments real quick. I'd already written down to look at city code earlier in the conversation. I just want to get clarity. Is this trailer park addressed in city code, or it's not?
So this is city-owned property, which it's state licensed. There are aspects of the city code that require compliance with state statute for mobile homes. Okay, they must be parked on a foundation. The points that I was getting to earlier is that we don't have stricture within Sandy Beach that state, once again, back to the mobile home specifically, because that dictates the quality or the status of the slab that's installed. We know that they must be on a slab, but we don't know what slab. In the event that you choose a lighter, smaller variety of mobile home and only allow those in your park, you could create smaller slabs. That's not dictated in ordinance. There is ordinance on the presence of mobile home parks in the city of Lake Mills, the requirement to be compliant with state statute and be licensed by the state to operate a mobile home. But then some of that does and some of that does not necessarily apply when you're dealing with city-owned land as well. So there's wiggle room within it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So back to the parking lot aspect, Drake already covered very well some of the aesthetics and the entrance fee structure and how that might parlay with moving to more of a monetized parking lot. But for the loss of revenue for the season of construction of the B level, it would be about $90,000. There's currently 37 mobile homes there, which are each paying $2,400 a year. So you would lose that revenue for one season. And then we are estimating, again, from the concept that we're using right now, that you would lose about $50,000 a year long-term because you would lose 20 mobile home lots. The mobile homes are put in there a lot tighter than they would be if you move to the design shown on the concept, and I would say to like kind of current codes of spacing and lot sizing and things like that. And so that is something to keep in mind, I would say fairly significantly, is that, that if you moved forward with the concept as we've been looking at it tonight, you would lose $50,000 annually just from the lower level of revenue at the current lease rates as well, which is important to keep in mind.
That's what I was going to ask about, is if we would be looking at adjusting the lease rates once, there's more modern amenities.
Right.
I don't think
It
you
may
would
not
have-
be precisely that
I don't
amount,
think the
but-
council would have a choice but to raise the lease rates based on the investment costs that'd be necessary.
Good point. And then the last bullet on this slide is that, Dustin and his team at Mead and Hunt looked into some parking lot monetization payment, so options. And one that his team recommended was the T2 Velocity Payment System. It's a camera license plate recognition system that requires people to pay via entering their license plate, and there's a whole system on the backside that notifies city staff of certain license plates that haven't paid, and issues a violation notice to either place a ticket on the car, or I believe, if I'm understanding things right, even potentially mail them a ticket via the license plate registration. And so there's lots of options of how you, if you choose to monetize the parking lot, how you do that, wide range. This was one of the ones that was like least intensive on staff resources and things to enforce. And least intensive in terms of the infrastructure that you would need to install. It would be more of a kiosk with a fiber connection for internet connection is all you'd need, or at least probably two maybe. But
And there's, even within monetizing the parking lot, there are, policy decisions the council will have to make and we'll have to look at what capabilities are of whatever monetization system we look into. But is there a process to register, one vehicle per address of a residents of the city in order to be able to park at no cost, so that you can avoid that? That obviously has a revenue impact, but it maintains the kind of the city's history of residents get to enter Sandy Beach at no cost. Now, obviously, biking, walking, you'd still be able to get in at no cost, but that conversation still needs to be had, is how do we want to treat resident access in terms of, if we monetize the parking lot, is there a desire and is there the ability to, based on what system we select to enforce parking regulations, to provide some avenue for a no-cost option to residents. We do get significant out-of-city visitors to Sandy Beach, so we'll have to kind of figure out what impact we think that might have, and what percentage of, the daily users would be kind of exempt from paid for parking, and how we'd implement that. But it's a conversation that we have not had yet about how we want to treat monetization of the parking lot.
one thing I'll add.
Mr. Wolf
Go
has a
ahead.
comment.
Oh, Dustin? Did you have a comment, Dustin?
I was just going to compliment some of the things that Drake was commenting on with this parking system. Yes, it does have the ability to have registered license plates that would be automatically in the system. That would be exempted from a payment. So you can have a single vehicle from a household be registered within the system. Again, it does provide a grace period. It doesn't require physical staffing. It works off of, as Brandon mentioned, license plate readers. It gives you a grace period, predetermined grace period, before you'd have to exit the facility. If you do not pay within that grace period, it would then, yes, develop an automated letter that gets sent out for a violation directly. But it is a very flexible system that enables you to kind of work through these issues that Drake has been raising. It's why we would be recommending this system. It's been in place in a number of other public applications and has worked very well.
Is this particular system, would we, if we desire to go forward with monetizing the parking lot, is that something we could implement in '26 if we desire to test it out and get a good indicator of the amount of revenue we get in before we actually get to the point where we need it?
I think, yeah.
It certainly can, as Brandon was indicating, it's got a very minimal infrastructure need.
Okay.
So there are just 2 readers at each entry. And again, it reads generally front license plates and rear license plates as it comes through the system. So we are working on getting some costing. We were trying to get them in advance for this, just so we had some numbers. The vendor is monitoring, obviously, some national issues that are going on with pricing. And so we're still working through that. But yes, it could be implemented in very short order.
So
Thanks.
we could, and I think this is kind of what you were alluding to, you can monetize the existing parking
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
before any renovation were
Yeah,
to
that's
occur.
what I was asking. Okay.
And if you were to go back to that 2018 October meeting, there was a sheet in there that had some estimates from Mead and Hunt on parking lot revenues. Based off, I think they were using a $15 per day rate. Obviously, the rate would be at the choice of the council. But just for some scale, if you wanted to go back and look at that, there's
Ballpark,
lots
yeah.
of assumptions made there in terms of how busy and how full and how long in the year. But I would say that it's important to note that the current system with the entry fee structure is pretty minimal positive revenue. You collect revenue, but then you have to pay somebody to be at the gate to collect the revenue, and the net is fairly minimal, and it would be projected this would have much more positive revenue than that system.
If you want to find more information, it's at t2systems.com.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
So if we go with this type of system, I'd like it to be automated. I want there to be a police presence at Sandy Beach, but I don't want them to be writing a bunch of tickets all day. There has to be a better way to use our police force than to do that, so.
Yeah, our police presence at Sandy Beach is geared towards those community service officers that we included in specifically in the 2025 budget. They have been writing parking tickets down there. Obviously, that's on Sandy Beach Road, not within the parking lot and things of that nature, and then kind of interior park enforcement. But I do agree, the automated system would allow our police staff to focus on more important matters to public safety than constantly needing to police the parking lot during the summer.
Because I'm sure they'll get alerts every 10 minutes. Oh, I got to go back to the parking lot. Then another alert, back to the parking lot.
Right.
So,
And we may, not to get too much into the weeds tonight, but we may need to look at parking along Sandy Beach Road, if that's free, and then, but then you can go, once you go into the parking lot, you have to pay. We might want to do something different with the road, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was thinking about that with the park down the street. There's
Yeah.
that, where they could park for free and then
Yeah.
just walk. And so it
It's already
fulfills your walking designation, but it doesn't provide revenue. Or park alongside the road, like you were saying.
Yeah. All right, keep going,
Oh, yeah,
Brandon.
the next slide, please. So some potential key phasing dates here. June 30th of any year in the current lease that the mobile home community has, would be the last day that you would have to notify them of the lease termination for the next season. So that, I think it's a 6-month lease termination notice. So if you did it after that, you would be kind of too late and it would renew for the next season. October 16th of any year is the end of the mobile home season of use. November 1st of any year is the typical WISDOT standard end of paving season. You can squeeze in a few days here or there after that a lot of years, but don't count on it. It gets a little risky. And then January 1st of any year is that mobile home community lease auto renewal. And then after Labor Day to before Memorial Day of any year is kind of what we feel like would be the right time for the parking lot. So those are some of the key drivers. There was a pretty detailed timeframe in the packet that we did not include here. It had a lot of detail on it. We're already talking for a good amount of time here, but those were some of the key dates that drove that timeframe and kind of filled in between those.
So I wonder if we could have, just in the interest of time, just some brief discussion, any, burning questions that council members have, and then staff maybe identify what you would recommend for next steps.
Yeah, before you start your discussion, the final thing I would note is really the only thing that staff would advise you needs to be resolved, must be resolved, is the utilities under B level in the short term. Whether that is a full redesign of B level or whether that's decommissioning, that area, that is what needs to be addressed. The A level is not as in the emergent situation that we, in our opinion. The park amenities obviously can happen whenever. The parking lot doesn't have to be redone. I think there's been conversations that it may not be functioning at the level that we would like it to, or provide, the amenities that we'd like it to, and certainly the volleyball courts are a portion of that. But as far as, if you were to ask staff, out of all of this, what do we need to address? It's the B level of the mobile home community, and then the lift station, but that's a much smaller piece of this conversation.
And just, I guess, a follow-up question to that, does that also tie into this year versus next year? So, would we potentially need to make that decision before June 30th?
We are not recommending you to issue notice yet this year for something to be done next year. While we have the ability to provide notice with that 6 month, there is eviction procedures and things of that nature we may run into. If we did run into an eviction situation, the amount of time that would take would chew up your construction season most likely anyway. And so we don't advise rushing to try and give notice and do something in 2026. We would advise 2027 start for the B level. And that also gives us more time to analyze the details of these project plans and the cost analysis, the revenue analysis, and also allows the Parks Board to get through their process of the park amenities that you've asked them to review, so that we can continue to look at this comprehensively. It is within your right to ask us to provide notice by this June 30th. If you choose to, we can get that on an agenda and we can do our best to make that happen. But I think that will cause us more trouble than benefit.
Thanks. Any questions from council members this evening? Great.
I'd like to make a statement. Can I do that?
Go for it.
All right, community, give me your feedback. My my email address is on the city website, and I think everybody on this board actually would like to hear community feedback. That helps us to understand what the community's desires are for the Sandy Beach location. So that was my first comment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I would wholeheartedly agree. Encourage our citizens to reach out to us, let us know what you think. Is there any information that we can provide tonight to address some of Mr. Noga's questions regarding what we would be expecting of a manufactured home owner as far as, move out, storage, what their options are in that year in between? Is there any clarity we can provide tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we've heard feedback, so we understand that they have those questions, but that's...
We intend to continue to have conversations with the association and try to work with them as closely as possible to make this as smooth as it can be once we know what the goals of the city council are, so that we can bring it to fruition in the most efficient way possible. yeah, I think certainly the most pressing issue, I think the association doesn't disagree with either, is the remedy of B level and what the solution of B level is. And so, I think that televising A level is certainly a next step that we need to take in order to gain our best information. Mr. Noga was obviously here, within A level before anyone, I think even at this table, would have not been involved in that project. And so we've gone back and we have found some records of what went on, but without without televising and getting a visualization of what's going on, it's difficult to tell to what quality and what standard that those projects may have been done, and to what the full scope of those projects were.
When you're talking about A level and B level, is the A level the orange area that's
The big
up
one.
higher? And
B
then
is as
the-
far west as you go in the movement.
over,
B is more
over by
level with
Rotary
the
Park,
parking lot.
going
Yeah,
towards Rotary Park,
maybe
basically.
As
B for below or something. I made that
Below.
up right now, but I don't know. B
Which
for-
is by the parking lot.
Yeah,
Good
Closer to
alliteration.
the parking lot.
Okay, I just want to get clarity.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
All
All
right.
right. A
Then
is
the
above and
Pines
B is
the
below.
closest to Rotary.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Talking about
Because
the
I was
same
thinking that
place,
way,
yeah.
but I wasn't sure if everyone was thinking the same way.
Mary?
Well, I've always felt a super sense of urgency to get that level B looked at, given the report back in 2015 had the number one key driving force why we were even looking at Sandy Beach was the infrastructure, specifically in that area, but underneath the mobile home community. And so I think there's a big sense of urgency. I would like to see us be aggressive on having working sessions. When I look at the amount of decisions that you went through many of them just at a very high level that we have ahead of us, that getting our calendars has been very challenging. And so perhaps a suggestion at some frequency, we have a 2-hour meeting, I don't know what it looks like, a working session we can always cancel, to move this along, because I feel we're going to have a lot of conversation, because it's not going to be easy in some regards to make decisions on some of these items. And specifically starting with just general goals, you mentioned it a few times, Drake, what our goals are, financial goals and/or culture goals for Sandy Beach, or recreation goals. The Parks Board brought their own goals forward, or criteria that they are using, that we're starting to talk about as it relates to R. We're in R now. The map R, or the proposal R. And Eric did a great job bringing forward the Parks Department's objectives and goals that we're using to guide our conversation and trying to help formulate whatever we decide to bring forward as a proposal. And so I think that would be my recommendation, is we start and be aggressive so that we don't hold, these timelines are super appreciated, the single sheet. But man, it means we've got a lot of work to do collectively, because it's been a lot of years and we're a new group. I mean, Greg's new and I'm newer, and since this all began. So I would just propose we think out of the box and just get together and go.
Yeah, I think if there's no strong opposition from this council to the general layout of the sequence of events that would occur, staff can start putting together more detailed analysis of specific pieces of these projects, and really lay out each component of each project and each feature of each project as far as our cost analysis. And then we can show you the revenue, current revenue, expected revenue, and game that out as much as possible in preparation for a future work session or a future meeting, whichever way we'd like to schedule that. And so we can start getting some of the broad questions answered. Is once you see the numbers, maybe that tells you that informs what you see the future of B level to be, and what the solution to that, whether, you really have two, right? You redesign or you decommission. you know, which of those, which path do we want to go on B level? And then we can also work on what, when visualization of A level might be able to happen. Now, on this schedule, we have some time on A level and to develop that analysis, but, and then in conjunction with that, we can put together some updated numbers on monetization of the parking lot for you, to show that, so we can look at kind of the big picture decisions you have to have. You know, what are you gonna do with B level? Do you wanna monetize the parking lot? Those are kind of the two big things we have right now. And we talk about that, moving forward. The interior of the park discussion is obviously with the Parks Board right now and can continue in parallel with this and can happen at any time. There's no restriction on interior park improvements, other than, obviously, if you want to move forward with the parking lot, the volleyball courts are that decision needs to be made on if you want to prioritize relocating them. So, if this order of operations, as I've been saying, makes sense to you from a conceptual standpoint, we can start putting together project-specific more detailed plans to help you with what the decision points are at each step of the way.
I think that would be helpful. I think the financials on the manufactured home community, particularly B level, are going to be necessary for us to make that decision. I guess I'd like to repeat one of Mary's suggestions from a prior meeting, that we look, or that we ask staff to just always keep in mind, are there some little things that we could make some progress on? You know, whether it's moving the volleyball courts, assuming that that's what the Parks Board recommends, whether it's getting rid of the old boat ramp and the bait shop, if it's convenient with some other demolition project that's going on or whatever, just little things where we can be, working toward things that we know are that we're likely to want to do regardless.
Yeah, we had some high-level discussions over interior park amenities, but we didn't want to overstep into what you've asked the Parks Board to do, so we've kind of been waiting to see what comes out of the Parks Board as far as what they would recommend prioritizing, to see if we can then provide some analysis of that in support of what they may be recommending to you, and which ones are more intensive projects and which ones may be an easier implementation.
Great, thank you.
So I think August is when the council asked for a report from
August,
them, so
a couple months.
staff has not spent a large amount of time discussing, other than Eric preparing for Parks Board, obviously, about what interior park improvements should be prioritized in the schedule of what those interior park improvements should be and where they fit in, this council's priorities of what should take precedent as we're developing our 5-year CIP of the city as a whole.
Okay. Any other comments from council members tonight? Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate all the detail and lots to think about. So I'm looking at the rest of the agenda, and we still have quite a few items to go. Drake, is there anything that you could indicate now could be held till next time? I don't know about the next item. The conditional use request that's currently tabled, can that wait on Linden Street?
I would decide on that one simply because it's been on the table for so long.
Okay.
I think that the petitioner, in that sense, I think we should get an answer
Okay.
to them. The kayak rentals, we'd like to have that approved before Memorial Day. I don't think that is I think that is likely something that you can do relatively quickly. We didn't have issues with them. It turned out to be a popular service. So if you want to just, the next two,
Linden Street, is that time
can do,
sensitive? We want to
and
go
we
out to bid
can,
on
I'm comfortable if the council desires to delaying any closed session discussions to a future meeting.
That could be delayed?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we just keep going through the agenda then and see where we're at in terms of time, so. Okay. Thank you for that. So we're on to letter E, which is Resolution 2480. So Lisa, could you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-80, Conditional Use Permit Declarations and Findings, Nina Jacobson and Rena Lira, Conditional Use Permit for Alternative Cutting Plan and Fill and Grading on a slope greater than 20% within 300 feet of the shoreline. 109 Lake View Avenue, Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel number 246-0713-1143-049.
So this is currently tabled, so we need a motion to remove it from the table and vote to bring it back.
I'll make a motion to remove from table Resolution 24-80.
Second. Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quednow. All in favor of removing it from the table signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, that's 5-0. So we have Resolution 24-80 under consideration. We have our zoning administrator, Mr. Evenson here. You want to walk us through this?
Sure. I will quickly try to summarize this one. I know we're short on time, but quickly, I just want to acknowledge the amount of time and effort. Property owner is here also, and the contractor.
Okay.
I mean, this parcel that we're talking about is smaller than this half moon area here. It's they trying to utilize the small amount of property that they have there up against the lake, but it's kind of unique. The two things that stand out you'll see is the retaining wall that was approved by Planning Commission back in November. This was recommended for approval back in November, and the reason it was tabled for so long is the retaining wall that was proposed was a fieldstone retaining wall, and it's right up close to the property line, and the property line is our city right of way. And we thought an engineer would look at this and stamp it and say, yep, good to go. Turns out no engineer wants to stamp fieldstone. They just can't get a consistent, I don't want to talk engineering, but they wouldn't stamp it and say, hey, this is going to withstand the traffic that could potentially be on this area because the road is up for redesign here in the next 3-4 years, if I remember right. So they had to go kind of back to the drawing board and get an engineered block wall that an engineer would stamp that would withstand any sort of traffic up against that property line. So they're trying to utilize obviously as much as property as they can, but in order to do that, it had to get engineered. DPW approved this engineered plan. So now we're back in front of you guys with the approval. The other kind of unique situation is our stormwater outlet discharge is about close to the middle of this property too. So they're going to take it upon themselves to correct. We've got some erosion control issues over there. They're going to correct that, try to beautify it as much as they can, and utilize that and allow the city to maintain that stormwater discharge there. Really everything else, it complies. What's there now is a lot of noxious weeds. I think even the purists around there would like to see those things get removed, and they've got an engine or a landscape architect plan that meets the city requirements. Got some decent plantings in there, a new walkway, and then a little area for them to in the off-season store a pier, and then when the pier's out, they'd be able to put some chairs down there and enjoy the waterway there. So that's it. Any questions?
Any questions for Troy? And I am so sorry, I didn't realize the property owner was here this evening. I
was cringing when you were talking about
I would have moved this item up a little bit earlier for you. If there's no objection, I'll recognize the property owner. If you would like to come up and say anything about your project, you're welcome to. You don't have to. Yeah, come on to the microphone. Just introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
Hi, I'm Rena Lira, as the duo with my sister there. Yeah, we had started this plan because one, our family's been here for like over 40 years, so we're involved with the community. But we're concerned about shoreline erosion, and so that's how we initially started this, like, what can we do for that? And then, like Troy said about the storm water drain, and then the stairs aren't in the best condition. They're okay, and so those were our goals. And, we had put the plan together with the contractor and have talked to the city and worked with the city on that. And it was a little frustrating because we're the first ones that had to do some extra reports and expenses and things like that. But I like to think we are where we can approve it and start it. And, we're looking forward to beautifying it too, because it is, it does need a little work there. Partly kind of because of the water, the storm drain, that erodes so much. A tree had actually fallen, and so, that's kind of critical too. But, yeah, we just want to get the project started, and, we're looking forward to improving the land and yeah, keeping it part of Lake Mills on that, so. Any
Are
questions?
there any questions for Ms. Lira? Okay, we have a resolution 24-80, and it has a number of conditions that are proposed as part of the conditional use permit, and as Troy mentioned, the Plan Commission recommended approval. Is there any discussion from council members? Okay, seeing none. Greg, sorry. Go ahead.
So it was tabled at council. It did not go back to a planning commission, did it?
No, Plan Commission took action. They recommended approval, and so it was after that date in which there was those conversations that occurred, and the decision was made to table at that time. So, yes, Dwayne?
I believe there was a condition on the motion at Planning Commission for the review of the design.
And that's why it ended up getting tabled. I'm just trying to remember back is all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think Troy had advised us that there were additional conversations going on regarding the engineering, making sure that the retaining wall would.
No, sorry, go on.
He can remind us.
So on the memo, one of the recommendations was approved engineered plans by DPW. We didn't have them obviously at Plan Commission, and so in order for us to, before we brought it in front of you guys, we had to get those engineered plans as one of the recommendations in the memo. And that's what we got those, 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And that's why it was tabled until we got the engineered plans. So the retaining wall, the specs basically stay the same, the location, it's just it goes from field stone to an engineered block wall now. So that's why staff chose not to go back to Plan Commission. There just wasn't a big enough modification to the original plan.
Thank you.
Well, I'll move to approve Resolution 2480, conditional use permit at 109 Lake View Avenue.
Just a point of clarification, since we brought it back off the table, do we need another motion?
Yes.
We do, okay. All right,
I'll
motion
second.
thank you, okay. Motion by Ms. Schmaker, seconded by Mr. Waters. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Lisa, would you do a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-80?
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mrs. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Lira. Thank you for your patience this evening. Okay, our next item is Resolution 25-31. Lisa, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 25-31, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Surf Shack Rentals for the provision of self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach and Mill Pond Park for the 2025 season.
I'll move to approve Resolution 25-31.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. And we have our Grounds and Facilities Director here, Mr. Schreiner. Welcome.
The only other addition here is that we did include the mill pond based on Parks Board recommendations. It's the same company, same lease structure, 10% of revenue sharing. They've been a great partner to work with, so the only difference that you're going to see is just reflected on the mill pond. Rental rates also are staying the same since we started business with them in 2023, which I think is great. So hopefully this is in line with Parks Board recommendations.
That's great. Just a clarification, why does this need to come back to the council? Is it because of the expansion to the mill pond?
That's the primary reason.
Okay.
We also adjusted the lease just a little bit because it was Surf Shack's first year in operation with the city of Lake Mills. We didn't add an automatic renewal
Oh, right.
last time. So this year we
Okay.
did. It's not automatic. They have to provide notice of their intent to renew. The city then has the ability to basically audit the system, make sure they're paid up, et cetera. But there is an avenue so that this won't come back to you again in the future.
Correct. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Any questions? Great.
In the past year, was there any concerns with this operation?
Not at all. Great partner to work with.
Great, thank you.
Good to hear. Did you get feedback from citizens about it?
Generally well-liked. I've had a lot of people asking me when they're going to be in business again for the 2025 season, so still have public interest in it.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, Lisa, would you call the roll on Resolution 25-31?
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mrs. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quednow,
Aye.
Mr. Coots.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
For my notes, who made the motion to adopt and who seconded?
Greg Waters moved and Michelle Quidnow seconded.
Thank you
Is what
very
I
much.
have. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, next item, Resolution 25-32. Lisa, would you read that one for us?
City Council Resolution 25-32, approving 2025 Linden Street Utility Construction Plan.
I move to approve City Council Resolution 25-32, approving the 2025 Linden Street Utility Construction Plan.
Anyone like to second?
I guess I'd like to have city staff comment.
I'd either withdraw the motion or have someone second it, otherwise you're going to kind of be stuck.
Yeah, we can't really discuss it until we have a motion and a second, or the motion is withdrawn.
I will withdraw.
Okay. All right, we can have city staff go first, thanks.
This was originally a part of the Milton Street bidding document. We thought that attaching it to Milton Street would result in better pricing. That did not end up being the case. The amounts we got back on it were what staff deemed unacceptable, and we recommended rejection of that alternate on the Milton Street project. This is now a rebid as a standalone project. The Public Works Board did consider this. They did make one change. That's the kind of the final whereas you see there, where they've added, in the design of this, we added some stormwater features in order to direct flow of water and improve a situation, but it is not necessary to complete those features for the extension of the utility. And so that includes, the screed curb, the concrete flume, sidewalk crossing grate, and curb and gutter replacement would be bid as an alternative under this resolution. And so if that pricing came back and the reduction in cost was significant enough, the council would have the option to not accept that alternate and therefore reduce the cost of the project. This was made necessary by a recent annexation following a failed septic system. Since we are in proximity, the county does not re-permit a new septic system. This is a town island, wholly surrounded by the city of Lake Mills. And so we do need to get utilities out to this property. We're hopeful now bidding it as a smaller project on its own that will get more bidders and more competitive pricing. The city's past practice has been to special assess these costs to the connecting entity. The council is not obligated to do so, but that has been your past practice. That involves a special assessment process, which involves hearings and things of that nature. But obviously, this is a small extension, limited number of homes along this route. And so cost is a factor, certainly for the city, as well as trying to be sensitive to the needs of the homeowners and ensuring that there's fair pricing, which obviously we weren't satisfied with what we got at the first time and did not want to award that. We recommend approval to authorize us to go out to bid and hopefully obtain better pricing than we did previously.
I know we had discussed for Linden Street the possibility of doing the tree protection pilot program as well. Is that in or out of bid?
It's not in there. It may
okay, good.
alleviate some confusion of contractors if they thought that it would apply to Linden Street, but
Okay.
there are no city-owned trees on Linden Street, so, and they're not in the right-of-way, so we don't.
Thank you.
Even if you told us to do the tree protection policy, there would be no trees to implement it
Well,
on.
I was wondering if you were going to, if there were trees. It's a small street, so I didn't think it'd be a great place for a pilot. And we have already accepted one long, nice, big road on Milton Street as the pilot, which I think we'll learn a lot from. And so I was just, thank you for sharing that it did not include that. So that makes it simpler, I think, for the bid.
Yeah, and I guess the motion on the pilot of the tree protection pilot program did specifically list the roads that we would do it on, and Linden Street would not have been included, so.
Okay.
But in this case, we don't have to worry about it since there are no city-owned trees in the right-of-way in this area anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Not yet.
Any other questions? Okay, now we can have a motion on Resolution 25-32.
I move to approve Resolution 25-32, approving the 2025 Linden Street Utility Construction Plan.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Ms. Schmager. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Lisa, would you please call the roll on Resolution 25-32?
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mrs. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quednow,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Mr. Waters.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. The next agenda item is Ordinance 1274, and tonight is the third reading. So Lisa, would you please do the third reading?
City Council Ordinance 1274, amending City Code, Chapter 38, City Council, Section 38-3, Meetings, Rules of Procedure.
Thank you. So I will make a motion to amend Ordinance 1274 as presented in Ordinance 1274A, which is attached to our agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Curler and a second by Mr. Waters. So since I'm the sponsor of this, I'll just give a quick overview and then we can have discussion.
Can I make a motion to table real quick?
Make a motion to table?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to table ordinance 1274-A into our next meeting.
I would recommend you make a motion to postpone to a date certain. So a motion to postpone to the June 3rd city council meeting. A motion to table, you can't specify a date at which it comes off the table. So just, Robert, I would recommend a motion to postpone to the June 3rd city council meeting if that's your desire.
And then secondarily, the ordinance is still 1274 unless you take action and vote on the proposed amendment that was just proffered. So that motion, the motion to amend has been made and seconded. If you want to proceed in addressing that tonight and then motioning to table 1274A, that would be appropriate. Otherwise, the motion to postpone, otherwise the motion to postpone simply must be 1274 at this point.
All right, I'll make a motion to postpone ordinance 1274 to June 3rd, which is our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Waters, is there a second?
Trumps a motion to amend. So I think he can. I think it's in order.
If he says 1274.
Right.
He originally said 1274.
Is there a second? Okay, there is no second on the motion to postpone. So I'd like to, again, just quickly go through, I made the original proposal, I sponsored Ordinance 1274. Got a lot of really good feedback from citizens and developed some revisions which are in Ordinance 1274A as an amendment. So some of the key changes that were made, one is there was a section regarding behavior during public comment, and I've proposed to move that to apply more broadly to the entire council meeting as it's under a descriptor of conduct. Also, public comment opportunity is not limited to city residents and taxpayers. The 30-minute time limit that I had originally proposed for public comment is removed. There is an additional language that the presiding officer can limit public comment for specific reasons that are listed. And then additional language that city residents and city taxpayers will be given preference to speak first. So those are the key changes from the original ordinance that I introduced to the amendment that I've proposed tonight. And with that, I'll open the floor for discussion.
I have a question. Underneath section K, number 3, I'm just wondering, because I don't normally have to sign in to speak at the podium, is the subject of their comments part of the form for signing in, or is that new?
Asking them to provide the subject of their comments is new. That's something that's not on our current form.
Okay, and is that something that we feel is important to note for documentation purposes, or what's the reason behind that?
Great question. The reason that I wanted to include it kind of ties to some of the other language in the other parts of the public comment changes, so it would allow the presiding officer to see if the topic was something that was not on that night's agenda, and there was a lot of people who wanted to comment, then that might be left till later, or perhaps that commenter might be asked if they could come to a future meeting if we had a busy schedule or a lot of people commenting. So it just allows the presiding officer to know which topics people are wanting to speak on.
Okay, and if a person fails to put that down, would they be then revoked of speaking?
I don't know. I don't think the ordinance gets into that level of detail. I guess it would be up to the presiding officer. Dan, I don't know what your thoughts would be if we had a sign-in form and somebody didn't fill it out completely.
The ordinance itself doesn't create penalty, but the presiding officer, as you stated, does have discretion to recognize. So I think if they're not meeting the minimum criteria that's required, then you would have the discretion to say nope.
And it does say anyone wishing to speak is required to provide these 3 things, and then it says they may be asked to fill out a form. So really, they would just be required at a minimum to provide that information when they are speaking.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, the council can have Ms. Curler was on the plan commission when we had significant public comment, and at that time, because of the amount of public comment, rather than signing up at the podium, we, before the meeting, had sign-in sheets that we then brought those registration sheets to the chair, and it marked what they wanted to speak on. I think we may have put whether they opposed or supported the topic that was on the zone. It was a zoning. Would have been a zoning amendment, I think, that was on there that night. And then whether or not they wanted to speak. And so then the chair could go through those. And then if someone didn't want to speak, right, you can say John Smith from 345 Main Street has registered in opposition to the zoning change, but does not wish to speak. And then you move on from that. So you're not going to set that kind of standard in ordinance, but as far as how you implement public comment, I think that you can adopt different, the administration of how you take that in. And so there's ways for this council to decide how it wants to operate that may not be specifically defined within the ordinances.
Thanks, Drake. Any other comments or discussion?
I have some
Greg?
questions.
Yeah.
On section 2A1A, it's on the first page. It crosses off at 7 p.m. and adds at time. What is the thought process of eliminating the 7 p.m. city council meeting time?
So my thinking here, and this was suggested by staff, which I supported, is it would be similar to what we recently did with the Parks Board, where they had a specific date and time in ordinance where their meetings were required to be held, and they wanted to change their meeting date and time so that they could meet in the council chambers and be recorded, but they couldn't do that until we changed the ordinance. And so this really just simply allows, if there was ever a reason that the council wanted to change the regular meeting time from 7 p.m. to something different, it would allow the flexibility to do that. It doesn't require us to change it from 7 p.m., but it would allow the council the ability to do that. And it would be done, it would be on the agenda as a, meeting time setting, and there'd have to be a vote on it.
Yeah, I guess my concern is I've seen in larger cities where they've moved that time, so maybe it's more appropriate for staff, but it's not appropriate for the citizens of the community to come during the business day to watch city council proceedings. I know a lot of those larger cities, probably the city's council might have higher, they might be compensated, and maybe it's their full-time job, I'm not sure, but for us, I think it's really important that the community's involved and that we pick appropriate times where the community can be involved in our proceedings, so that's my concern. By moving it from 7 p.m., it may cause conflict with the community.
And again, just to clarify, changing it in the ordinance here does not move the meeting time. It would require a separate action by the council. Correct me if I'm wrong, Drake, but it would require a separate action by the council to change the meeting time.
Correct. And even with it being set at 7 o'clock, the council can still, it would take an action at a meeting. You could still reschedule your regularly scheduled meeting time. And so I would imagine that this would be something that would get incorporated into the annual organizational if it did proceed this way, and that the time of the meeting would be established annually at the organizational meeting and then set for the year. Functionally, I think that's probably how it would work. Obviously, the council can choose to meet, not meet as frequently as it would like at any time it would like, provided appropriate notice has been provided under the open meetings law.
The next,
Did you have other questions?
the special meetings. The section removed was to the individual member personally or left at their usual abode, meaning a house, at least 24 hours before a meeting. So this is giving notice to council members about a special meeting being called. And it's also changed to 2 hours instead of 6 hours in advance of the meeting. I guess this was made because of the digital aspect, the ability to notify council members by email or by text. Is that the thought process there?
Right. I learned through going through this process that this ordinance was written about 30 years ago, before we really had texting, before notices were able to be posted online and everybody able to, access them the way that we can today. And I think the police officer used to deliver the printed packets to council members and so forth. So we're not really in that age now. So that's really striking. That just says they'll be notified within 24 hours.
Yeah, I've had a police officer delivery before, and it's
Yeah.
quite disturbing to have a policeman.
Yeah, not what you're expecting,
door,
right?
But at the
Especially
same-
in our community, like, wait, why is there a police officer coming to our door?
But at the same time, if there's only 2 hour notice and I'm at work and I'm not looking at my city email, I'm not going to find out that there's a special meeting unless, probably even if he delivers it to my house, I won't know. But I'm just concerned about missing special meetings because we're changing this, I guess, is my concern, so.
So
Would you-
Go ahead, Greg.
Would you get it at work with 6 hours' notice?
6 hours notice, there's a higher likelihood that I may be home from work at that point.
Yeah, but it still has the same problem with an immediate notice, the same day.
If I may.
That will be a problem no matter what we do.
This is probably the only portion of this I'll have an opinion on. Is I would advise you to adopt the 2-hour notice. It mirrors state statute, and that 2-hour notice is only available to you in the event of an emergency. I have reviewed the city's emergency declaration ordinances. Unlike other communities that operate under a city manager form of government, the city does not have an ordinance that specifically allows my office, my position, to declare a state of emergency absence of council action. Oftentimes, a city manager may declare a state of emergency and implement certain measures in order to maintain the health and safety of the community until such a time as the council is able to meet. So if the council is not available, then there are certain powers that could be conferred upon me. In the event of an emergency, those powers are quite broad that are available to the city. For example, as we have experienced more significant weather events, if a tornado were to strike the city of Lake Mills, which hopefully never happens, the city has the ability to set curfews. It has the ability to limit transportation into and out of the city and take significant action in order to protect the life and property of the city of Lake Mills. There is no mechanism for me to take those steps without the city council taking action. And in the event of an emergency, which is the only time that you'd be able to call a meeting with 2-hour notice under state statute, you can't just call it to discuss a zoning amendment or approve a contract, something of that nature. And so there may be a time where that 2 hours becomes essential, and 6 hours becomes not only inconvenient but potentially harmful. And so I would recommend that we potentially look at our emergency declaration ordinances, but I also believe the council should avail itself of the authority granted to it under state statute to call a meeting within 2 hours to address an emergency, which could involve allocation of funds, reallocation of funds, as well as the other measures that might need to be taken to preserve life and property in the event of an emergency.
Thank you for explaining that, Drake. And would it be fair to say, if there is an emergency, staff are going to be calling, they're not just going to be emailing, they're going to be doing everything they can to reach council members and at least reach a minimum of 3 so that some action could occur.
Yeah, if we are in a situation that necessitated and justified a 2-hour meeting notice, we will be doing everything we can in order to get the council convened.
In one way or another.
So what is a definition of a special meeting then?
Because it doesn't say emergency.
Special
That was a
meeting is
great-
any meeting that's called outside of your regularly scheduled meeting. So not the first or third Tuesday.
So, and if you read that entire clause, it requires 24 hours notice for a special meeting. However, in the event of impracticality or impossibility, then that would indicate an emergency situation. And in that circumstance, an emergency special meeting could be called with a minimum of 2 hours notice.
And any such special meeting would not occur unless there was a quorum, right? So it's not.
Cannot occur
you
without a quorum,
can't.
correct.
It couldn't happen unless you had a quorum of members. Are there any further comments or
I have a couple more.
issues? Yeah, great, go ahead.
On H voting, ayes and nays, switch to noes. I guess I'm okay with that, even though it changes Robert's rules, but noes is a little bit more defining than a nay, I guess, because nay is very close to an A. So.
Aye.
Well, the alternative could be in the first sentence, you could change no to nay. I just happened to notice as I was going through that one sentence uses the word no and the other sentence uses the word nay. So this is really just to make the terms consistent.
And then as we go a little bit further down in section H, section 1, the council will provide an opportunity for public comment at
Okay.
section 1. I
K1.
guess it's K, excuse me.
K1, okay, yep.
K1, the council will provide an opportunity for public comment at each regular meeting. Public comments are to be addressed to the council and related only to city business. There will be no discussion by or with council members during public comment period. So as a council member, are you allowed to ask a question?
That's a good question. I mean, this has been our practice, and my understanding is it sort of comes from the open meetings law
Yeah,
requirements and not
what-
getting into a discussion on something that's not on the agenda, but Dan, what do you?
Specifically not taking action on an item that's not specifically noticed and on an agenda, correct? That's the crux of open meetings law. You must provide notice of the business that the council is going to conduct. If new or novel issues are brought up during a public comment period and there's engagement and kind of a natural acquiescence or indication that some action would be taken on that, there could be an open meetings violation. I think that's the intent of that clause. I think you take some steps to limit that by requiring the public commenter to state what the business is going to be discussed and where they stand on that. But I think it's attempting to limit basically a back and forth and a dialogue between the commenter and the council on items that are not specifically on the agenda.
So for instance, I see Anita in the crowd here tonight, and she commented a couple meetings ago, and I asked her if she could forward that information to me. That's acceptable to do that type of thing?
That certainly isn't like kind of creating a decision on a topic. That's a request for more information.
Okay. So to a certain level, we're able to ask questions, but
You know, what you have to avoid, right, as Dan is kind of stating, it's a matter of degree. So asking for more information or for something to be forwarded, certainly not an issue. If you start, if someone makes their comment and then there's a question and then they respond and then another council member asks another question and it creates a dialogue that's going on a topic that's not listed on the agenda. The public was not properly notified that the governing body would be discussing an item related to city business and therefore did not have the opportunity to attend or participate or observe that process. And so it's easier to just not engage than to try and decide what degree is acceptable. Certainly you can't vote on something that's not on the agenda, but there would also be concerns if there was the perception that you were building consensus or that you were leading towards a decision where essentially if you put it on the next agenda, the discussion's already been had, the consensus has been reached, and the decision has been made before it was noticed. That is the concern when you get into a back and forth dialogue on something that's not listed on the agenda, is that the public has not had time, does not know that you're talking about something related to city business that they may have an interest in observing.
Well, even something more infantile than that, if they get more time than other people do, then that's not fair. Everybody gets their 3 minutes, equal. if you engage, then they're gonna be up there longer and other people will be upset. Why didn't you engage with me?
All right, that's all I
Any
have for
other-
questions.
Any other questions or discussion?
I just had one observation regarding a comment I made at the last meeting, that there was a little conflict between items K1 and, K2 and K4.
Oh, right.
And so I would, now do I make a motion to amend? I would just change one word. I would change the word "and" in K4 to "when." So all speakers shall be treated with respect when given an opportunity to participate, because if you break the sentence down, it's an "and," it makes it inconsistent with the chance, the opportunity that may not present itself depending on what the presiding director states.
Nice.
So I would just change it to "when." So I don't know how you do an edit. Do I have to make a motion to do an amend, to make a word change? But I would make that one change, and then I support that sentence.
You can ask for unanimous consent to make that change is probably the simplest, sorry.
Well, no, I think that's appropriate. 1274A hasn't been voted on yet, the proposed amendment to that. So if the maker of that motion consents, then you can just add that to the original motion. Or yes, you can take a step to go through a process of unanimous consent on that specific change based on an argument that it's an unintended error or something like that.
Yeah.
If you can't get unanimous consent, then you need a formal motion.
Okay.
The simplest way is what Dan described, is the maker and the second agreeing to incorporate that into the
Okay.
motion that's before you.
Okay, so I made the motion, so I'm agreeable to changing the word in K4, changing the word "and" to "when." Okay, and Greg was the seconder. Greg, are you
I'm good with
agreeable
that.
to that? Okay. And then,
Thank you.
then we don't need a vote, just those two. Okay, okay. Any other comments or questions? I would just like to make a comment before we vote. I really am so grateful to the people in the community that came forward and shared their thoughts and their concerns about the original draft of the ordinance. And I apologize for any misunderstanding about what I was intending. It's clear that, I heard from a number of people that they really value the contributions to our community and to our decision-making from people who are not necessarily city residents, and I do as well. And so I think it was really helpful to hear about that and to have the opportunity to make some changes. Having said that, I also feel very strongly about my responsibility to represent the people who elected me. And so I hope people feel comfortable with giving city residents and city taxpayers the right to speak first, because that is who elected us, and that's ultimately whose money we're, charged with spending in appropriate ways. And so that's something that I feel strongly about. So overall, my goals in this ordinance change are, generally are for efficiency, but I really wanted to make sure that we're introducing respect and, good conduct in all of our council meetings, and respect for all the different opinions that citizens bring to us. So I hope people feel that these ordinance changes accomplish that, and I hope you will support this ordinance. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, then can we have a roll call vote on ordinance 1274A as amended? Is that right?
You'll have to take
Okay.
you'll have to take another
Got
vote
it.
on the
Okay.
amended.
To adopt the amended motion in the future, right?
Okay, so a roll call vote on the motion to amend 1274 as 1274A. Okay.
Mrs. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
And send that, so then now, is there any further discussion on ordinance 1274A? Okay, seeing none, then can we have a roll call vote on the adoption of?
We need a motion to adopt 1274A.
We had a motion to adopt by,
Nope, only a third reading. They never made
no, I made a
to adopt
motion.
before.
I made a motion and Greg seconded it.
The motion to amend to
amend.
1274A,
So you need a motion.
to adopt 1274A.
There was no motion to adopt 1274, which means that you have to make a motion to adopt 1274A.
I move to adopt motion, ordinance 1274A.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Quednow, seconded by Ms. Schmager. Any further discussion on ordinance 1274A? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, on ordinance 1274A?
Ms. Quednow.
Aye.
Mr. Coots.
Aye.
Mr. Waters.
Aye.
Ms. Curler.
Aye.
Mrs. Schmager.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. Our last agenda item is a second reading, and we're not quite at 10 o'clock. So, Lisa, would you please do the second reading of ordinance 1275?
Ordinance 1275, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance 660-44, subsection A, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Parcel identification number 246-07131-1231-000. Property address 155 East Pine Street, Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Owners, Lake Mills Area School District.
Thank you. So that was the second reading. Are there any questions or comments tonight on that? Otherwise, that will be moved to third reading at our next meeting. Okay, so recommendations for future agendas, that one will be at our next meeting. I think the library and Sandy Beach are maybe a little bit further out than the next meeting, but we will hear about those next. Greg, any suggestions?
Can we get a yard waste update?
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, that's right. Public Works was working on that. Haven't heard the latest.
Actually, I think we passed it.
We passed something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yard waste.
No, it was passed the council as well.
Right, there was going to be a relocation.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Mary, yeah.
I am going to fulfill my duty as City Council Vice President, and I will be providing with Drake a report on the council's progress in fulfilling its goals as stated in our strategic plan in June. So either the first or second meeting in June. Drake and I will be working on that, so.
Okay. Great. So goal progress update, I guess, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other topics for future agendas? Okay, so it's just about 10 o'clock. Drake, did you say that you would be comfortable postponing the closed session?
Correct.
So then that would be at the next meeting. Do we need to take any action in order to do that?
Nope, you just don't go into closed session.
Okay. All right. And then we don't have to reconvene either. So do we need a motion then to adjourn since we're not completing the full agenda?
No. I think you can still declare business to be completed as long as there's no objection, you have no issue.
Okay. I'll declare business to be, I'll declare business to be completed at 10 o'clock. So thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.